Now trunks. Yeah, let me speak. This is switch 1 and another switch. See, first we'll discuss why we have come up with trunks. Yeah. VLAN red. What is this color? Magenta. What is that? Magenta. Magenta. I'm not good with colors. VLAN green. VLAN yellow. ठीक है भाई, ज़्यादा ही हो गया. What did I do is I have connected this switch 1 to switch 2. The same VLANs I do have on the other switch. Then green. And then yellow. See, what did we study till now is when my switch 1 receives a packet from this interface. Here, I am receiving a packet on this interface. What will he think? He'll think that is belong to VLAN red. Hana? He will think that it is belong to VLAN red. Now immediately he will check, do I have any interfaces part of VLAN red such that I can forward it? Such that I can forward it, obviously. Yeah. This means that from switch 1 to switch 2, if my VLAN red communication must happen, I have connected this way. And now what does it do? Now it has received this information. Through this red interface, it will be sending it to the switch 2. Now again, switch 2 received this on VLAN red interface. Yes, I have another interface, so we will forward it to this interface. Okay. This is what happens when we want two switches to be communicated, which are part of different VLAN. So if I am having VLAN red on one switch and have some same VLAN on other switch, and if these two devices need to communicate, whatever we have studied till now, according to that, this is the solution, without which I cannot communicate, right? Why? Because according to my switch logic, what does it do? It will check on which interface did I receive it, and immediately it will check what are all the interfaces that are part of that VLAN, and through that. So this is the case, right? So when I am receiving the information on this interface, being this as an access port, I'll think that the packet, that data, whatever I'm receiving on that interface belong to that particular VLAN. Why? Because I made it as access port, right? If that traffic has to go to another interface must be part of that VLAN. So I made it part of VLAN 10, sorry, VLAN red. I sent it. Here, this should identify that data as VLAN 10, sorry, VLAN red. So I made this also as a part of VLAN red. Access port is already being, it will send it to this port. No problem here. Clear? एक ही VLAN communicate करना है तो कोई problem नहीं है. अब VLAN yellow को भी बात करना है, VLAN green को भी बात करना है, इनको भी बात करना है. ठीक है भाई, देखो अगर मेरा स्विच पे if I am having 30 VLANs, in between these switches, I have to use 30 interfaces just to connect those switches. Exactly. Right? It is not possible. If I am having 30 VLANs, if I am using 30 interfaces to connect the switches itself, it is not cost effective. Right? Then what about the remaining VLANs? What about the interfaces remaining? See, I'm having around 50 interfaces on a catalyst switch maximum, right? 50 to 54 something number. There, out of these, 30 are used to connect the switches in between for 30 VLANs. I have only 24 ports remaining. Exactly. Right? It is not a cost effective. Right? In order to avoid such type of situations, they have come up with a concept called trunk port. What is it? Trunk port. Now, what is this trunk port? Switch 1 will be connected to switch 2 only with trunk port. And what does this mean? Whatever that VLAN traffic you need to send, or simple, this port being a trunk port, this is part of all VLANs. That is part of all VLANs. Here, whatever the VLANs you are creating on that particular switch, this trunk port will be part of that VLAN. ठीक है, मतलब सबका पार्ट. अब ये क्या हो गया? VLAN red, VLAN blue, VLAN magenta, VLAN green, and VLAN yellow. Whatever the traffic, this trunk port, it is part of all the VLAN, so all the VLAN traffic will be going through that switch. Through the trunk port, sorry, to the trunk port. Clear? Now the problem is solved. Like that, what the problem is solved, number of ports that we need to connect between these switches are reduced. We are saving 29 ports. We are saving 29 ports, where I can use that port for connecting some other host. Clear? Right. But there is one problem here. There is one problem. Why? Red, blue, green. I have received the information packet. I checked. This is part of VLAN red. I have seen trunk. I send it via this port. Switch 2 received it. You will also think that yes, this is a trunk port. It is an trunk port. I received some traffic on it. But to which VLAN does that belong? That trunk port is belong to all the VLANs. But I am receiving the traffic of a particular VLAN. Right? But to which VLAN does this belong? How will I know? No. Broadcast कर देगा सर जिसका वो ले लेगा और फिर स्टार्ट कर. देखो, एक पैकेट कोयले के लिए चलेगा, ठीक है. अब भाई ये इन दोनों के बीच में तो बात चल रही है. हर पैकेट ब्रॉडकास्ट करेगा स्विच? नहीं. हाँ, ठीक है. अगर आप बोल रहे हो ठीक है, this switch has received it, it will broadcast it. इस स्विच को मिला, ये स्विच भी ब्रॉडकास्ट कर ली. यहाँ पे अटैकर है, बैठा हुआ है बंदा, वेट कर रहा है चांस के लिए. मिल गया चांस. फिर VLAN बनाने का सेंस क्या है? फिजिबल नहीं है ना सॉल्यूशन. एंड व्हाट डिड they come up is they thought that whenever I am receiving some traffic, if I want to send that information through the trunk port, this is the packet I received. Under this, I'll keep a tag and I will send it. Now switch 2 has received it. Switch 2 will first check this tag. identification. It is like identification, right? It will check, yes, this is red. By seeing the tag, it will understand that yes, this data is belong to VLAN red, and it will forward it to this port. Clear? And this concept is called tagging. This concept is called as tagging. देखो यार, टैग होता है, आप ऑफिस पे जाते हो, ठीक है, अब एक बहुत बड़ा वो होता है, मतलब ऑफिस एक ऑफिस थोड़ी होता है, ठीक है, 2 3 4 ऑफिस हैं, ठीक है। अब ये सिक्योरिटी गार्ड को कुछ चेक करना पड़ेगी ना, भाई तू किस ऑफिस के बिलोंग टू, व्हिच कंपनी यू आर बिलोंग टू, ठीक है। वो कैसे पहचान, आई मीन हाउ विल आइडेंटिफाई, यू विल बी हैविंग अ टैग टेलिंग दैट यू आर बिलोंग टू सो एंड सो कंपनी। का मतलब यही हो गया ना, कुछ एक्स्ट्रा आइडेंटिटी टू द डेटा, राइट? सेम केस, if the traffic has to go through the trunk port, it has to be tagged. It has to be tagged.
What if suppose ये जो उधर ट्रंक आपका पोर्ट है, ये मेल फंक्शन हो जाए, मतलब आपने एक ट्रंक बनाया, अब सारे उसी के थ्रू जा रहे हैं, तो सर दो चीजें होंगी, एक तो उस पर ट्रैफिक भी बढ़ेगा क्योंकि सभी सिग्नल भेज रहे हैं उस पर, ट्रैफिक तो बढ़ेगा ही, ठीक है। और दूसरा, अगर बाई चांस वो पोर्ट अगर वो मेल फंक्शन कर देता है, किसी तरह फिजिकल डैमेज होता है, कुछ भी हो जाता है, तो डू वी हैव अ बैकअप फॉर दैट?
ऑब्वियसली वो चीज हम बात करेंगे, ठीक है। So what is this tagging, right? See, actually, you know, we call this as trunk port, right? But actually this process is called trunking. Trunking means that selecting the tag, it has, that port has got the capability to tag the data. Yeah. So first thing, trunk port means that which is part of all VLANs, part of all VLANs, right? And when a switch is sending the data through, or sending the packets through the trunk port, on the other end of the switch to identify to which VLAN does this traffic belong, in order to get out of this misconception, we have come up with a concept called as tagging. What is this tagging? Whatever the data my switch has received, whenever it has to send that data through trunk port, it will identify that this port is part of all VLANs. On the other end also it is part of all VLANs. On the other end my switch will be confused. So what will I do? When before I'm sending it, I will just tag this. I will give some extra identity to this data, which tells to which VLAN does this data belong to. And I will send it. And when my switch receives it, he will check this tag, based on which he will identify to which VLAN does this data belong. To which VLAN does this data belong. For suppose if it is LO, I received this is data, upon this I will mention it is LO. And he received it, he will check, oh, this belongs to VLAN LO, so he will forward it via the VLAN LO. Yeah, and this is called tagging, right? So if we have two switches interconnected and there are multiple VLANs existing on both the switches, in order to make multiple VLANs communication possible between these two interconnected switches, we use trunk ports, right? And this can be achieved by encapsulating the traffic with VLAN information. Whatever the information I am receiving, upon this I will encapsulate it with VLAN information. This is called tag, extra identity, right? And encapsulating the VLAN information is called trunking. The process is called trunking, or even called as tagging. And in how many ways Cisco does this tagging? In 2 ways. It can perform it in 2 ways. Okay, so trunk ports which are part of multiple VLANs are called trunk ports, and they can carry multiple VLAN traffic by encapsulating the VLAN information. If it is access port, it has not got that capability, right? But if it is a trunk port, it is part of multiple VLANs, so obviously it has to encapsulate the information, and that is why it is called as trunk port. And by default, trunk ports carry all the VLAN traffic and can be changed, so you can control it. By default, when you are making a port as trunk port, it will be part of all VLANs, right? But you can control what VLAN traffic can be allowed and what VLAN traffic cannot be allowed to the trunk port. That you can control it. Yeah. So trunking encapsulation. Encapsulation is adding the extra information to the traffic in order to tell the other end switch or receiving device to which VLAN does this traffic belong. And in how many ways can we do this? There are two types of encapsulations as of Cisco. As of Cisco, right? If you're going for another vendors, there can be their own proprietary and other encapsulations. But as of Cisco, there are two, right? One is 802.1q, which is open standard, which means that everyone can use this. Everyone will understand this 802.1q encapsulation. And ISL, inter-switch link. ISL encapsulation is Cisco proprietary. This means only Cisco devices can understand this and no one can understand this. Only Cisco. Other than Cisco, other than Cisco, no switches can understand this or no vendors can understand this. Clear? So how many types? Two types. One is 802.12 open standard, and other is ISL. Yeah. But the very bad thing is now even Cisco is not supporting this ISL tagging. Okay, there are various reasons. First thing is because of its length. ISL tagging is of 26 bytes. ISL tagging is 26 bytes, whereas 802.1q very light, only 4 bytes. So this is the main reason why Cisco even not supporting this ISL. If it is old switch, it will be, but if it is a new generation switches now, they will not support this ISL no more. Only .1. Yeah, first thing. Now, where do we add this encapsulation? This is my data. Upon this, I have transport layer information, application layer data, transport layer header. Upon this, I have IP header encapsulation, Ethernet header, right? 802.1q will be in between here.
Ethernet or IP.
Between Ethernet and IP header, it will be here. 802.1q tag. And that is why 802.1q is called internal tagging. But because this is encapsulated inside the frame, in between the frames. So that is why it is called as internal tagging. And what is the size of this? Only 4 bytes. If it is ISL, observe this green, it will be over this Ethernet header. Here, ISL. And that is why ISL is called as external tagging. Understood? And how many bytes does that ISL contain? 26 bytes of data. 26 bytes of information. Yes. 802.1q, it is an open standard, and it supports the concept of native VLAN. By default, VLAN 1 is a native VLAN. What is native VLAN? That we'll be discussing. Don't worry about it here. And all the traffic except native VLAN is inserted with a 802.1q tag. Then this will be same. So first you see this only, it is an open standard. Yes. So let us do a small practical. Switch to switch 1. What will I do is Ethernet 1x2 on both the switches will be a trunk ports. Okay. Shall make them trunk ports and then we'll discuss. Enable show interface trunk. I don't have anything. It is blank. Right? Go to that interface, whatever you want to make as trunk. Interface configuration mode. Switch port mode trunk. What is it? An interface whose trunk encapsulation is auto cannot be configured to trunk mode. This means that this cannot make the interface as a trunk. Switch port trunk encapsulation. Let me go for .1q. Right? All the options available. You have various options. Go for encapsulation, and then you will have .1q ISL or negotiate. Yep. So I'm going for .1q and dash it. And now if I give the command switch port mode trunk, भाई देखो यार इंटरफेस कॉन्फ़िगरेशन में गया, कॉन्फ़िगरेशन मोड में गया मैंने, उसके बाद मैंने बोला भाई स्विच पोर्ट मोड ट्रंक. ठीक है, ये तो ISL और .1 के दोनों को सपोर्ट कर रहा है, तभी ये बोल रहा है कि भाई ये तो ऑटो मोड में है. पहले आप एक काम करो, जो एनकैप्सुलेशन होता है पहले इनको डिफाइन करो और इसके बाद स्विच पोर्ट मोड ट्रंक कमांड दे दियो, ये बोल रहा है वो. ठीक है, तो मैंने पहले एनकैप्सुलेशन डिफाइन कर ली. स्विच पोर्ट मोड ट्रंक एनकैप्सुलेशन .1q. मेरा जो ऑप्शंस मिलता है वो 3 मिलता है यहाँ पे, .1q ISL और नेगोशिएट. मैंने गया .1q पे, मैंने डिफाइन कर ली .1q और इसके बाद मैंने दे दी ये कमांड स्विच पोर्ट मोड ट्रंक. एक्सेप्ट कर ली. अब ये तो बोला था मैंने, बस पहले आपको एनकैप्सुलेशन डिफाइन करना पड़ेगी और इसके बाद स्विच पोर्ट मोड ट्रंक. ठीक है, अगर नया जनरेशन की स्विच है ना, इसमें तो ये कमांड भी ये पूछेगी नहीं, तो सीधा ये बोले कि स्विच मोड ट्रंक एक्सेप्ट कर लेगा. ठीक है, exit. Now you have defined a static trunk. If you are making a static trunk, show interface trunk. Switch will not care the other end of this interface is a trunk or not. Why? Because on my end, my network admin himself has told me to make this as trunk. Here, so it will blindly make that port as trunk. When this is a static trunk case. If you are making dynamic trunk, then at the both ends negotiation must happen, and at the both ends if they come to an understanding, then only they will become trunk. If not, clear. So show interface trunk. Earlier there was no output, but now I have Ethernet 1x2 trunking mode on. What is encapsulation I have defined, and what is the status trunking, and what is a native VLAN by default. 1. VLANs allowed on my trunk. By default, all the VLANs. By default, all the VLANs. And VLANs allowed and active in management domain. What are all the active VLANs that are active? 1 and 10. Other than this, I don't have any VLANs.
अच्छा सर मुझे ट्रंक पोर्ट के थ्रू तो सारी जा रही है ना, तो सारी डिफॉल्ट में होंगी उसका एक्सेस।
अब मैं स्विच 2 पे जा रहा हूँ।
जब भी आप पे गए थे मैंने उसमें वहां पे गए डायरेक्ट सीएलआई से कैसे गए?
मैं सीएलआई से नहीं है, आपका कंट्रोल टैब प्रेस करना है, दूसरा टैब करना है। Interface again, here also the same thing, E1 by 2 switch port trunk encapsulation dot 1. First I need to define the encapsulation, so I did it. That's done. Came up. This will be the output, show interface. Like whatever the number of interfaces you are making trunk, all they will be listed here. Therefore, suppose if I make E1 by 1 now, I made it E1 by 1. Show interface trunk to are listed.
वो 1 और 10 आ गए
बस,
और 8 डॉट। सर इसमें 1 by 2 भी ट्रंक पे है क्या?
अभी किया था ना, 1 by 2 पहले किया था ना।
कब किया था?
अरे भाई क्या देख रहे हो, प्रैक्टिकल ये रहा। राइट, अब एक कमांड हो गया, शो इंटरफेस ट्रंक, शो इंटरफेस, और पहले ये दिखा, शो VLAN brief. Which interface did I make as a trunk? It is E1 by 2, Ethernet 1 by 2. ठीक है, अब VLAN 1 में E1 by 2 तो है ही नहीं, दिख रहा है कहाँ भी नहीं। बस VLAN 10 में है वो नहीं। अगर एक इंटरफेस किसी भी VLAN में नहीं है, इसका मतलब ये है कि वो ट्रंक है नेटिव VLAN, तो मतलब वो है ट्रंक।
ठीक है।
Why? Because if I am making that port as a part of any VLAN, it will be listed in that VLAN. If it is not there in any of the VLAN, that means it is a trunk port. So this is the reference. Now if I show here, show interface trunk, ठीक है, ये स्विच 1 पे ये E1 by 1 कब बन गया ट्रंक, वो आपको जब मैं DDP पढ़ाता हूँ तब आपको समझ में आएगा। ठीक, अभी के लिए
ये सर समझ नहीं आ रहा कि मतलब हमने सिर्फ एक है जो हमने ट्रंक बनाया है ना, यहाँ पे दोनों में दो ट्रंक दे रखे हैं, 1 by 1
देखो
और 1 by 2।
स्विच 2 पे मैंने दोनों को ट्रंक बना दिया,
पर हमने दो को ट्रंक क्यों बनाया, मतलब हम एक ही पोर्ट को ट्रंक बनाते हैं। मुझे ये चीज समझ नहीं आ रही कि आपने जब बताया था थ्योरी में, तो आपने कहा था कि एक ही ट्रंक बनता है, मतलब एक पोर्ट हो जाएगा वो ट्रंक हो जाएगा दोनों कनेक्ट करने के लिए।
देखो मैं ना आपको ये चीज, मतलब ट्रंक पोर्ट आया है क्यों, ये कॉन्सेप्ट आया है क्यों, I was explaining that situation to explain you why did trunk come up, why did we come up with a trunk concept.